my name is Shannon Fischer and I'm interviewing for the manufacturing engineering position at Sigma Pro Engineering. As far as a complex problem that I've personally identified and solved, at my last position we had an assembly where there was a tiny little nut that was on the bottom of the plate that they had to then assemble some parts and screws into. The problem was they had problems finding the proper tool to hold that nut in place. And the space where the nut goes was very limited. So I had to do some research and figured out that we couldn't insert the nut into the plate. We had to use a tool to hold the nut. And so I looked into different tools that could hold nuts and different tools that would allow reaching into small, hard to reach areas, and I was able to design a part that was attached to a little wrench that allowed the assemblers to hold the nut in place while they screwed the additional parts into that plate. The next question is types of manufacturing processes that I'm familiar with. I have had experience with nitrogen laser cutting, injection molding, stamping, bending, and assembly. During a performance review several years ago, my supervisor expressed an interest in me wanting to learn more about how to better manage multiple priorities. I had a tendency to work on one project at a time, and he needed me to work on several projects at once with different kinds of deadlines and different priorities. I was able to find a workshop that I could attend that gave me hints and tricks and tips that allowed me to better manage multiple projects at one time. Steps that I take when I investigate and implement process improvement. The first thing I always do is go out to the production floor and talk with the assemblers and find out what they're currently doing and look at the processes and identify where an improvement could be made. Then I write the manufacturing change request and get that sent out to the floor so they can start making those changes immediately. And after that has happened, I make all my changes to the documentation, whether it's a procedure or it's the job traveler, and then those documents get sent around for approval. And once it gets approved and implemented, I'm always available to answer questions on the new process changes or even do training if necessary. Examples where I've created a new tool. The last product that I worked with at my previous position was a chassis assembly that had PC boards attached to the rails, and then a lid needed to be put on both sides. The problem was if the spacing wasn't correct between those rails, the lid wouldn't go on properly. And to maintain that spacing, we first used the lid, and we would attach the lid and put in some screws to the PC boards, then unscrew the lid, move it down to the next slot, screw it back down, attach a couple more screws with the PC board, and so on and so forth until we got all 8 screws attached to the PC board. This was very time consuming and not the best way to go about doing it. So I was able to create a fixture that would maintain the rail spacing so that you could put all 8 screws into the PC board and then attach the lid in a very time efficient manner. As far as steps that I take before deciding to implement the process, like I mentioned before, the first thing I always do is go out and observe the current process. Depending on what type of change is needed, I also will do time studies and talk to the staff. And then once those changes have been implemented, before they're made permanent, I go out and evaluate it again. That way I can find out if those changes are actually serving the purpose that they're supposed to be doing, whether it's making it easier for the assembler to put the parts together or it's trying to cut out some labor and cost savings. The two most important values that I think a leader can have is they should be an effective communicator, both as a speaker to get their ideas and training across to their employees, but also as an empathetic ear and listening to their employees and solving problems that come across that way. And finally, the options that you were given that I think are important are job stability, salary, the culture in which you work, and finally, the opportunity for growth. Thank you.